Hey guys, Juan here. Thanks for joining us on another service here at CTK Online Church on a Wednesday night. We are so glad you guys are here, and we have some exciting things planned for today's broadcast. But before we get into that, I just want to make a quick little announcement. We will be continuing CTK Online Church on Wednesdays for a little while now until told otherwise. So be sure to tune in with us every week here on Wednesday because we will be broadcasting. Now, I like to start our services off with a little fun question to kind of get some interaction going online and to get people talking. So this week's Wednesday night question is, what is the name of the song that would describe your quarantine? So if you're watching on Facebook, go ahead and post on the chat box here. If you're watching on YouTube, comment in the chat box below. If you're amongst other people, discuss this answer. So what is the name of the song that you would describe your quarantine? Go ahead and do that now. Okay, here's a quick little commercial of Miss Evelyn Chalfant talking about a new resource that we're offering our CTK community. It's called the Green Pages. Check it out.
Hi everyone, my name is Evelyn Chalfant and I'm a member here at Christ the King Community Church. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the CTK Green Pages. Even though we see each other every week or more, we don't always know what skills and talents our friends here at church have to offer. Many people rely on those skills, though, to financially support their families. Others rely on those people with skills to do them, right? So back in 2011, when the economy was a particular challenge for all of us, Pastor and I set out to put together a resource that our church folks could use to communicate what services our fellow congregates could provide. Essentially, we wanted to be able to get their names out there so they could make some money and at the same time let people know who could provide a service for them. Now it's 2020 and again we find ourselves in a world where we may need to rely on each other. So we're recreating the Green Pages. You know, like yellow pages, only green? Yeah? So, our Green Pages are a resource that provides a list of individuals who agree to provide a service in an honest and responsible manner. It's expected that they will be fairly compensated for the services they provide and that the price for services will be agreed upon before the job is accepted. Compensation might be in trade or barter or a monetary figure. If you use these services, it is expected that you will honor the details of the agreement as well and pay as agreed upon. And while CTK is not responsible for the services provided, our name is on this resource, and both consumers and providers do represent our church. So we've created a form to get information about any and all services you would be willing to provide. The form is available at ctk.today. Just look for the Green Pages card. You can fill it out there and it'll be emailed appropriately. We'll also have some paper forms here at the church so that you can fill it out on paper if you'd prefer to. They'll be at the Welcome Center. Thanks so much and have a great day.
Okay, we're going to kick off today's service with a fun video because I think we can all enjoy a good laugh or a good smile. So check it out.
Hey, welcome to Relevant Church drive-thru service. Oh, all Jehovah Java is actually buy one, get one free right now, just so you know. What can I get you?
Can I just get the #1 combo with the hype worship and relevant message?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so for the worship, do you want Elevation, Bethel, or Jesus Culture?
I mean, you know the vibes. I mean, I'll take Elevation.
Okay, and for the message, which one of these guys?
I mean, what's the difference?
Look, man, they're all cool. They all know Justin Beaver. Just pick one.
Hey, JB, bro! I mean, I like that guy's glasses, though. Can I get him?
All right, okay. I mean, you could have had Mike Todd, you know, but all right.
I mean,
Hello, sir. Welcome back. What can I get you? Well, son, you know, I'm just in a mood for a little bit of old-fashioned church. I've been stuck up in the house, and you can only stay in the prayer closet for so long, amen? Yeah, so what kind of worship are you wanting? Hold on, is that? Oh, is that? Oh, no. Get me out. Oh, whoa. Every week, man. Every week.
Okay, I'm under a lot of spiritual attack right now.
Uh-huh.
My Instagram engagement rate is down by 2%, and my parents won't even pay for my mission trip to France. There are so many unreached and single people there.
Okay, all right. What do you want to order?
I just want some encouragement and...
Okay, all right. Okay. Hillsong Worship and the Sadie Robertson message. Coming right up.
I wasn't done. I mean, that is what I wanted, though. And now I'm at iced coffee.
Hey, sir, how are you doing today? What can I get you?
I don't know. We've been quarantined for 2 months. Anything to give me some peace. Ow! Stop biting your brother, or it's no Veggie Tales for a month. Oh, for the love of God! Please help me, sir.
Hey, no problem. Okay, you want the family special. Carrie Job, followed by Joel Osteen, and some communion for the kids.
Yay!
Hey, listen, I put a little NyQuil in the grape juice, so just give the kids a few minutes. Thank you. Hello, ma'am, how can I help you today? Yes, I already know what I want. Okay, well, what can I get you? I want Darlene Check and Joyce Meyer with a little bit of Beth Moore, but I don't want her to get too political. Okay, so what do you want me to do? Did you just talk back to me? Sorry, ma'am, I was just trying to help. Okay. You know what? I want to speak to a pastor. Okay, I'll go get one of our associate pastors right now. No, that is not what I said. I want to speak to the senior pastor. Ma'am, that's not possible ever since we reached 5,000 members. Okay, well, it's obviously not God's will for me to be a part of this church. Ma'am, I've worked here for 3 years and I've never even met the guy. This was clearly just for a season, and it's even more clear to me now that this season is over. Ma'am, and you know what? You're not even 6 feet away. I am so you know what? Sorry. Demonic! I can't wait to go back to church.
All right, that was a funny video. I enjoyed that one. Today's speaker is going to be Brother Andy Burns giving you the message. So here he is.
Hello again, and we're going to talk tonight more from Joshua chapter 2. We talked last time. I had the privilege of kind of digging into that a little bit, some treasures we find in that, and exploring that a little bit more. We read more again about Rahab as we continue in her saga with these spies that she's hidden. Some of the topics we talked about last time was Rahab's past, her current occupation, and some of the other attributes we think of when we think of Rahab. And so here we are with somebody who has hidden these spies, much to her own risk, and now she's going to help them escape. For some reason, the king already knows that they're in the city, so we wonder about his counterintelligence and some of the tools he had at his disposal. We also can't help but wonder what the purpose of this mission even was. It doesn't seem to have any kind of military importance. It served no tactical purpose, yet we look at it as some kind of reconnaissance mission. But what I think it really had to do with is the fact that God had his eye on Rahab. Rahab is in lockdown. Rahab is a person marginalized in her society. She is a prostitute, but she's still an industrious woman. She has her flax that she has on the roof. In fact, that's what she hides the spies under. Interestingly enough, if we go to Proverbs 31:13, we read that's one of the attributes of a Proverbs 31 woman. She's got her flax, and she seems to be quite industrious. She's pretty intelligent, and she has some pretty interesting insight. It's going to have some implications later on. For example, we talked about last time, how does she know about the God in heaven above and earth beneath? That's a pretty profound statement. We think about it in a couple different passages in Genesis. It's a specifically Hebrew statement, yet she is not a Hebrew, but she has this intimate knowledge of God and a very deep understanding of God. In fact, we probably won't see this statement maybe more than 7 times in the rest of the Old Testament. But here she is, and she understands it. We talked last time about how she knew the story of the Red Sea and the parting of the sea. This was something that happened 40 years before, yet it was still striking terror into the people of the city. The Amorites were all scared. And this was information she passed on to the spies. This is information they carried back to Joshua. You also notice there's only 2 spies. 38 years before, Joshua and Caleb joined 10 other spies on a reconnaissance mission. This one has more military significance. However, 10 of them come back with a pretty disparaging report for Moses. It's only Caleb and Joshua, as you recall, who give a good report, who have encouraging news at all. And so maybe Joshua knew that he didn't need to send a lot of spies. He just needed to send the right spies. And so here we have these two men who have been hidden by Rahab. And again, great, enormous risk that she's taking. We already have active counterintelligence looking for these two men in the city. And so she not only hides them, but she also lies for them. Now keep in mind, this passage is not a free pass for lying. This passage is about somebody who is not yet saved, but she has this intimate knowledge of God, and she also has this understanding about investment. We talk about Jesus and some of his parables, including the talents, and we realize that Jesus has definitely a big picture idea when he's talking to people about what he wants to do with their talents and with their investments. And so I think that rather than a military mission or any kind of tactical value that this had at all, I think God simply had his eye on Rahab. And of course, we ended our talk last time talking about Rahab and how she's going to play a part in the genealogy of Jesus. She is a direct ancestor of Jesus. In fact, she is the mother of Obed, who is the father of Jesse, who of course is the father of David. And we know that David is in Jesus' line. So you can find that in Matthew 1 and 5. And so God, of course, seeing beyond time, beyond those boundaries, he knows exactly where Rahab is going to fit into history, even though Rahab doesn't. But I would suggest that Rahab has a pretty good idea that God's a pretty big God, and it doesn't matter how marginalized that she may be or how disenfranchised she could be. She has faith, and she's going to put all that faith into these men and into this token, in this case being this cord. We talked about the meaning of the cord, what that word is, how the author of this text actually changed the use of that word. He went from one meaning that described the rope as something used to mark boundaries or part of an inheritance, part of your sign, X marks the spot, for example, to a different meaning altogether, the word tikva, which means hope. Both mean rope, but have a lot different implications. And so as she speaks of the rope the first time, this is what she sees as her inheritance. We can interpret it that way because it's a different word. And so here she is, her inheritance, that she is dangling out this window. We could get into a whole separate topic on how some of those root verbs from that same word even mean lattice and window. This all ties into God's plan and his great design that we see time and time again in Scripture, where we have meanings and deep meanings under all these layers, and you have to dig just a little bit to find them, but when you do, what a treasure is revealed. And so she lets these men down this rope that we now call the tikva. It's the hope that she will hang out the window, and she'll keep it hanging out the window because, again, we talked last time about the casement living, how she lived basically in between the outer wall and the interior wall, not really ideal real estate. If you were selling properties in Jericho at this time, you'd probably have a hard time showing this one as a real estate agent. She lived in one of the worst locations you could be in if your city was ever under siege. But it's an ideal location if you have this promise, because she could hang that cord out the window, and as the spies promised her in their covenant with her, when that token was seen from the window, they would know everyone in that house would be spared. It's interesting to think about that because it kind of mirrors what we see in Genesis when the death angel passed over for the first Passover. Of course, everyone in the house was saved at that time. That would include even an Egyptian, the whole household. And so same with Rahab. Anybody in her house would have been saved, and she did live with her family. And the spies even told her, here's a little disclaimer, anybody that steps out, it's on them, it's not on us. As long as they stay inside, they're okay. And there she had her inheritance, her token, her sign, her hope hanging out the window. Now don't be confused, because her hope is not in the rope itself. It's only a token of that hope. Her hope is in God. And again, we look back at her insight and we think, How did she have that kind of insight? How did she have enough faith as an Amorite, possibly even of Egyptian descent like we talked about last time, living a life as a prostitute in a godless city? How did she have that kind of faith? How did she have that kind of understanding of who God is? And it has to only be explained by divine revelation that the Holy Spirit had revealed this to her because of the enormous part that she is going to play in human history, in our salvation history, because again, she is an ancestor of Jesus Christ. And so we all know how the story goes, and Rahab is saved. Rahab goes on to marry Salmon, who is from the tribe of Judah. We'll see how the story ends with Rahab, and we will see how her line is again mentioned in the story of Ruth. And so as we see this line come forward, a couple interesting things pop up. Again, they tell us God is in control, that all of this is designed, that there is a plan, that God has everything firmly in the palm of his hands. He controls every bit by design. There are no mistakes. And so we look at Ruth chapter 4, and we see something pretty interesting in her direct descendants. We see that at this wedding, there's a toast made. And what's recorded is that we want this house to be a house like Rachel and Leah. Pretty explainable. We all know who Rachel and Leah is. And so when we go into the book of Ruth and we read about this wedding and we see this toast, it makes perfect sense. But the second part of the toast is a little bit weird because it talks about Tamar and it talks about Pharez. And that's a little bit unusual unless you go back to Genesis 38 and you read a little bit more about the line of Judah. Remember, Rahab marries Salmon. Salmon is a descendant of Judah. He's from the tribe of Judah. And when we look back at who Judah was, we move past his little problems and hiccups he had with Joseph. And many years later, as he's established his family, we find another interesting story, not necessarily focusing in chapter 38 on Judah himself, but on Tamar. Tamar was initially his daughter-in-law, marries his eldest son, who is evil in the sight of the Lord, and his life is taken. Son number 2 steps up because the law was at the time. That's what they would do. Not only would they step up, but if there had not been a child, a male heir that had been sired, that younger brother would do that with this wife that he has taken, his brother's wife, and the inheritance that would have been his brother's would all pass to that son, who would be considered legally his dead brother's son. Big responsibility, and what we find out is that son number 2, he doesn't really dig that idea. In fact, he wants all the benefits of being married without all the responsibility, especially this big responsibility. So guess what? God takes his life. And now we've got son number 3, who's not quite old enough to marry. This is Judah's third and last son. He's a little bit worried because the first 2 have all messed up, and the common denominator is Tamar. So now we're asking even more. What on earth is this toast in the book of Ruth that has to do with Tamar? This is very strange. And so we dig a little bit deeper. And what we find out is that Tamar, who is a little bit worried because she sees that son number 3 is coming of age. Here she has moved into Judah's house, but she is a widow. She has no heir. Judah is worried because he has one left. And of course, we got to think of the patriarchs, we got to think of the times, we got to think how important it is to have that heir. And now she's a little bit worried. And so what does Tamar do? Tamar, who also is a foreigner, Tamar decides that she's going to use her faith. She has a tremendous amount, as we'll find out, because she takes matters a little bit into her own hands, stepping out on faith, trusting in God, taking that first step, knowing that ultimately it's not in her hands, it's in God's hands. And so what she does is this elaborate scheme where she dresses as a prostitute when she knows that Judah is going to go up to shear the sheep. And as we read in chapter 38 of Genesis, we find out that Judah takes the bait and he sleeps with her. However, there's a transaction that takes place before that. She tells him that she will accept a delayed payment, which will be one of the sheep from the flock when he returns. But in the meantime, she needs collateral. Guess what that collateral is? That collateral is, we'll read it differently in the King James Version, but in the Hebrew Bible, we'll understand it as his token, his sign, his seal, his staff, those 3 items. That cord Again, we see the mention of this cord, again, a token of the hope that Tamar is going to have in whatever she's about to do, this endeavor she's about to take that could be the difference in having a future and having any kind of inheritance. Again, stepping out on faith. So to fast forward through chapter 38, if you haven't read it, the Cliff Notes version are as follows. He takes the bait, and when he sends back the payment he promised, which would also include the retrieval of those items he left as collateral, his friend discovers, who is sent on this errand, that she's gone, and nobody knows anything about a prostitute that would have had an encounter with Judah. A few months later, guess what? Tamar is pregnant, and Judah is furious because she has played the harlot. In fact, he's so mad he's ready to have her burned until she reveals a few tokens. She says, the father owns these items. Guess who it is? It's Judah. Judah steps up at that point. Judah takes her as a wife. She bears not one son, but twins. Pharez is one of them. Another interesting story at the end of that chapter, you find in this breach situation during labor, one starts to come out first, pops out his wrist, and the handmaiden ties a red cord around it so she knows who is who. Again, we see this repetition of this cord that plays a vital part. Again, it's not to be taken as anything more than what it should be. It's just a token, but it's a common theme. And what does all this have to do with God and knowing that God is in control, and it doesn't matter what the situation is? Why does it matter? Because God is in control of our destinies, and that's what's important. Because Tamar will give birth to two sons, but they're illegitimate sons. They were conceived before they were married. If you look at Deuteronomy 23, you find out, well, if you have an illegitimate child, he cannot enter the congregation of the Lord for 10 generations. That's a pretty stiff penalty, 10 generations because of an illegitimacy. Interestingly enough, as we go back to Matthew 5, we can count back from King David. And guess what? We find out 10 generations have passed. Not only was David legitimate, but it establishes a line of legitimate heirs from David forward, including Jesus Christ. Was it all planned? Absolutely it was. God is in complete control. He has it planned from A to Z. In fact, he is the A, he is the Z. He's everything in between. That's why he says he's the Alpha and the Omega. So as you think about that study, and you think about these different characters and these soap opera type stories that you just can't make up, really stranger than fiction, isn't it? But when we analyze it and peel back some of those layers like we've talked about, what we find out is that this is huge, this is deep. There's so many meanings, there's so many bunny trails. You can spend weeks in Joshua chapter 2 alone. As you read other chapters, you find a common theme. And it doesn't have to be red cords. It doesn't have to be hope. It doesn't have to be Hebrew root verbs every time you read the Bible. What you find out from start to finish, God's in control. He's in control of this. He's in control of me and you. So remember that, because right now we feel a little bit in lockdown. We feel that we're marginalized somewhat. We feel like a lot of stresses and anxiety in our life. But God is in control. He has seen this day coming from way, way back, and he's seeing what lies way, way ahead. So keep that in mind as you study these. I hope you look at Genesis 38. I hope you read a little bit more in Joshua chapter 2. And if you want to read Proverbs 31, always a great read. Maybe it'll remind you of Rahab when you do. Take care, and I will see you next time. Love you all, and I miss you all.
Well, that does it for tonight's Wednesday night service. Thank you guys for tuning in and letting us be part of your midweek. Now, we will be gathering this Sunday for 2 appointed services. We're going to have a 9:30 service and a 10:45. So we hope to see you there. And if you are not able to come, we encourage you to watch us on live stream because we will be broadcasting both services. So we'll see you there also. But until then, God bless you.